So what we've said very clearly is we've set out the 5 tests for what the next transitional phase would look like. It won't be just going back, it will be a new normal, if you like, with social distancing measures adapted to areas which are currently closed off.
Let's speak to our political correspondent, Rob Powell, who's in Westminster for us this lunchtime. Rob, did we learn anything new about the government's position today?
I think we did, but maybe in broad brushstrokes that Dominic Raab is using. He doesn't want to lay out the specifics. I think that's because, as he said, he doesn't want to have to walk them back at a later date if they turn out not to be the right options. I also think there isn't any secret paper lurking in Whitehall somewhere with an exit strategy that's been completely figured out. I don't think that has been signed off yet. I also don't think they want to put messages out because they don't want to dilute that stay-at-home message that they keep wanting all of us to stick to. But I think what Dominic Raab did talk about was the broad idea of how we're all going to be living after the current lockdown restrictions have been lifted. And I think that's very much that some of the social distancing measures we're all abiding by now will be rolled out across places which are currently closed. So if you think about the times you go to the supermarket, you have to queue up outside, 2 metres apart, a one-way system around the store. That could be applied to other more non-essential stores that could be open. Also in workplaces, we know the Treasury and other departments in government have been speaking to companies about how they can make their workplaces safe in terms of having fewer people turning up to the office, more working from home, people sitting further apart, hand sanitizer in the office as well. So I think that's the broad outline of where we will be. Also, I think the vocabulary he's using, now talking about the second phase, a transition phase as we come out of this lockdown. Very keen to point out, I think, that this isn't going to be a case of the lockdown just suddenly ending and a lot of things changing. A lot of the social distancing measures that we've got used to in the last 4 or 5 weeks, I think we're going to be living with for quite a while yet.
And Rob, what about the Labour Party? Have we heard anything from them regarding the easing of restrictions?
So the Labour Party are pushing the government to basically spell out in more clarity the way out of the current lockdown and basically put some more specifics on some of the broader ideas that they've laid out. And Sir Keir Starmer is pointing to the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, who's spoken about the possibility of schools coming back but pupils coming in on alternate days to make sure there's not as many pupils in the classroom as once. And they also want more transparency about where this evidence is coming from. Now, Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, has written to the Prime Minister overnight, laying out some of the issues he has. This is what he said. He said, the British public have made great sacrifices to make the lockdown work. They deserve to be part of an adult conversation about what comes next. If we want to take people with us and secure their consent, this is necessary now. This is a national crisis and therefore needs a national response. Maybe a sense from the Labour Party that initially when Sir Keir Starmer became leader, he was adopting maybe a less confrontational tone. I think from him and his shadow cabinet now, they're a lot more prepared to be critical of the government strategy going forward and what the government has done in terms of the last few months of handling this epidemic. Have a listen to Dr. Rosina Allen-Khan, Shadow Mental Health Minister, also a doctor who's worked in the NHS Nightingale Hospital in London, being very, very critical about how the government has handled this so far.
It would have been impossible to save all the lives that we've lost. But we did enter into lockdown too late. We did not deliver PPE to the front line when it was needed. We did not follow global advice on self-isolation, and we haven't rolled out mass testing and contact tracing.
So pressure coming from the Labour Party also calls from within the Conservative Party to be more clear as well. But if you look at some of the polling across the wider public, actually it's pretty clear that the public are more concerned about the government lifting restrictions too quickly than they are about them being lifted too slowly.
Rob, thank you. Let's take a look at the latest coronavirus numbers. The number of people diagnosed with COVID-19 who have now died in UK hospitals grew by 813 yesterday. This is a larger increase than Friday, but still slows the growth rate. The time it takes deaths to double to around 18 days. That compares to 10 days a week ago. Let's take a look at the stories behind the loved ones lost. A grandmother of 6 and a loving mother of 3. Pat Ambavarana left Sri Lanka in 1957, taking 6 weeks to reach England. Her family says she was a very kind and thoughtful person, always helping others.